This is Entrepreneurship 610 with Dexter Robinson. Today we're interviewing Brent Simmons, Group Director at Octagon. So Brent, tell us a little bit about yourself and just some of your professional experiences overall.
Sure. Again, my name is Brent Simmons. I've been at Octagon almost 11 years, coming up upon 12. Octagon overall is a sports and entertainment marketing company. Predominantly, we do a lot of consulting for big brands. We also represent some folks. So really, over the last 12 years, we've had a chance to grow a few clients here in the Charlotte office and hopefully tell you a little bit more about it today.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about your role specifically within Octagon and kind of what you do day to day, month to month, ideally.
Sure. So here in Charlotte, we represent one of the larger banks in town. We have a team basically that's split in half. For any bank, you have a variety of needs from client hospitality to entertain clients at some of the biggest and best sporting events all over the world. So we have a team here dedicated to that. I oversee a separate team that basically puts together marketing plans for anything that's public facing. So any branding you would see in stadiums, mass advertising, social media, digital media, within sports and organic environments, our team oversees. So we oversee relationships with MLB, the NFL, motorsports, and a variety of other CSR initiatives that the bank has.
Awesome. So you had mentioned just a little bit, just some of the marketing services. Speak a little bit more about branding and other marketing services that Octagon offers to its clients kind of holistically.
Sure. So, it's changed a lot. The last couple of years has really changed who we are as a company, just because of the demands of the marketplace. So, if you go back 5 years ago, I would have said we are basically a consulting company that puts on great events and we represent athletes. Well, that's transitioned. We're now a content shop. We're now a digital shop. We have an entire social strategy department. We have what I consider one of the best research and development groups in the industry. So we base all of our information and direction for clients based on our own proprietary research. And within that, we have an entire creative shop too that can create a lot of these assets to make them come to life. So from a group that's really been event focused and everything you'd see inside a stadium, we've evolved to a group because of how the industry's gone that can both do that as well as hit you in the other environments that you'd be consuming content, whether it's social media, whether it's digital media, whether you're in a financial center, whether you're in the general marketplace. We've been forced to evolve to hit consumers where they are all day, every day, because anymore not everybody's going to a game. They consume in a variety of other ways.
Awesome. Fair enough. How do you help your clients determine what kind of marketing and branding services and strategies they need, and what types of research is done to support those suggestions?
Sure. I mean, I think, we love to sell all of our services to every single client, right? I mean, that's how we make a few bucks. But realistically, every client is entirely different. You may have certain clients that have 5 or 6 agencies that represent their business where Octagon is just sponsorship. You may have other clients or brands that are smaller and just starting out that need a full plethora of our services. So really it just depends. We do a rather exhaustive study anytime we talk to a new brand or anybody interested in our services to really understand them. And it's a multi-period meeting that really has them fill out a rather in-depth survey so that we can begin to understand exactly what they need. We've noticed that it's very difficult at times just to simply say, we think we need this and that. We dig a little deeper. We ask them for their own financials. We ask them for their own org charts of how they're set up, how they've holistically gone to market, all their existing relationships and things that they feel their brand embodies. And what we do is we take that back into our own house, which I referenced earlier, and we put it into what we call passion drivers. And that's really evolved into another study called the Passion Shift. And that's Octagon's view of the world. And that takes us away from your typical casual and avids, which I feel like we talk about a lot. And it really segments both your casual and avids 2 or 3 more layers down. And it gives us an understanding that a brand like a liquor company, Jim Beam, and a bank like Wells Fargo, they may see themselves the same way, but understandably, their brand attributes are entirely different. So within that, we try to give them a few opportunities to kind of dig deeper without them knowing it so that we can fully understand kind of the breadth of resources. Everybody thinks they need social, everybody thinks they need digital, but based on budgets based on where they want to be in the country. That's not necessarily always the best bet. And so, it's our job to kind of customize that. And at the end of the day, they can listen to us or they can go their own way. But we try to meet them in the middle, a lot of the things they've outlined that they'd like to do.
Awesome. So that's interesting. You kind of pointed on something, and I'm going to go a little off script here with some
Sure.
of my questions, just because, like you said, a lot of people feel like they have to be digital, they have to be social media. Do you have any kind of insight, or just can you talk about that a little bit more to where that may not necessarily be the case? Different types of clients or industries where you've seen that, hey, you know what, a different type of marketing strategy is probably a better fit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Some of the biggest brands we work with, people know about them. You get to a point with some of these brands that say, our KPIs, our key performance indicators of success are brand awareness. Well, people know who you are. So the question is, how can we stick out? And with that, sure, social and digital is there, but it's a more increasingly busy marketplace. And so the question is, what is the best avenue to differentiate? Period. If that's a stunt in Central Park, if that is a social media campaign, if that is an influencer strategy, so that consumers feel absorbed in your brand without knowing that they're being targeted about it. There's a lot of different ways you can go. And just because you're big or small doesn't necessarily dictate the tactics. Some of the biggest brands we work with, we could come up with some very low money targeted elements that would help them get as big of a bang as spending a ton of money like a YouTube TV to be the official provider of the NBA playoffs or the NBA finals rather.
Right. Okay. So back on script, there are a number of ways Octagon engages with clients. What are some tips and tricks that small businesses or entrepreneurs can learn from some of your unique categories like mindset and culture? Sure.
Being organic to the environment, I think it kind of hits on what you were just talking about. And so, we have the greatest, biggest thing for us is esports right now. Everybody's talking about it. Hardly anybody knows what it actually is. We have some folks internally that know a lot more than I do, and we rely on them when brands or clients are interested. But there's also platforms within that are very organic to the experience. When you're on Twitch and you're watching some of the esports that are seen by literally hundreds of millions of people, if you're a brand that's not really organic to that environment, you're going to get eaten alive. And I think the same thing goes with brands and entrepreneurs saying, we don't need to just do what we want to do. We want to do what we want to do in an organic environment so that our current and future customers see us in a positive light because we are a part of who they are. If you're trying to interject a big brand or a X, Y, or Z, into that, it's going to be a very difficult conversation. And so with, to your point, Dex, with some of the smaller entrepreneurs, you guys, entrepreneurs and small businesses probably know who they are much more so than any big brand that's out there because they're the ones who started it or they're a degree away from that individual that did. In big brands and Fortune 500s, which we deal with a lot, brands are still trying to figure themselves out. And there's probably 10 or 15 people that have a different opinion on how to do that. And so with entrepreneurs and small businesses, I would just encourage them to, ask themselves who they are first and foremost, and then market themselves accordingly.
Gotcha. So we're going to kind of hit back on social media a little bit and kind of the digital stuff. I know we talked about it a little bit already, but some of your other categories like content and creative, as well as like digital and social media, like we've already said, they're really buzzwords. They're hot topics right now. So people feel like they need those things. So for those of folks that are going to go in that direction and have limited funds, how can they take advantage of some of those areas and categories?
Sure. As a non-social media expert, but trying to echo what I feel like our social media strategists would say is that, similar to before, it's an extremely cluttered environment. We joke that, we used to produce a decent amount of 60-second clips. Now it's down to 30. Now you're into 6 seconds, and like a year from now, it'll be like a 1 second logo and you're gone. But it's true. Old Spice did a very cool thing where they would have 6-second commercials or up to 15 seconds in the Super Bowl. I mean, they basically said, let's cut up our 30 into 5-6 seconds and kind of make fun of ourselves for exactly what the Super Bowl is. We've seen our clients do the same thing. And depending on the platform, that's increasingly more difficult. A typical 30 or 60 second spot is still fine. How it's shot has changed. Our clients used to do pre-produced, looks like a Hollywood movie or a commercial you'd see on TV. Now we've seen actually things are more consumed and more easily digestible if they're shot on a new iPhone 8. It doesn't need to be this perfectly choreographed storyline. The more raw and relatable it is, the better we've seen things consumed. And so, that I don't think's changed. That's what you've seen with Snapchat. That's what you've seen with Instagram stories and a variety of other platforms. But it remains interesting that some of the most pre-produced elements seem to actually come in one ear and out the other, where things that look like they're shot from your friend next door and going back to that organic environment are actually some of the best, received elements.
I can see that. So we talked about this a little bit earlier too, but
Sure.
Do you find that in your industry a specific type of traditional media like print or radio or TV, out of home or digital, is more popular or heavily used in comparison to others with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, you can get from an ROI perspective, and this is our argument every day because we did start as an event company, you can reach more people on social and digital media than you can setting up shop at an event and having them come by, whether it's an MLB All-Star Fan Fest, whether you're at the draft last night. We had clients that were there. They had about 100,000 folks. Period, end of story. Your ROI is better. If you need to say, I have $10 and I want to hit the most people, that $10 will go farther online. I get it. But the question is, and what we tell our clients is, it's not just one avenue. It has to be many. And so you need to invest into on-site. You need to invest into your in-stadium elements. You need to invest into the advertising packages that support if you're watching on TV. If it's a fantasy football and you're a football sponsor, you need to be a part of that. So it's not just one area. To answer your question, if there's one way to go, sure, your money could go farther with social because you can customize it to your exact clientele and you can showcase exactly what your return is. But we really do encourage our clients that it needs to be a pretty well thought out 360 strategy. And 360 is a crazy buzzword. We've used it forever. But what that really means is if you sign a deal for $1 million with a team, you need to be ready to spend probably that or more activating that relationship. It's no longer the fact where you can just sign a deal, throw up some logos everywhere, and consumers, hold you in high regard. And so we encourage our clients to take a step back when they look at deals, to really say not only what will it cost and the check they have to write to the team property, but what will it cost for that rights to kind of put through. And IP for us is a big deal so that we can really use those funds to take advantage of the assets that teams and leagues provide us for our relationship.
It's a pretty deep question. On to some more fun stuff. Like, what's the most memorable project you've worked on, and why was it memorable to you?
We had a few early on, and I'm sure we had three kind of come to mind. Two were right when I was starting my career, and I think early on when you're trying to break into any industry, you learn more because it's unknown, and so you by definition ask more questions. By definition, go in with your eyes a little more wide open versus maybe someone like me now, where 12 years later, working for a similar client throughout my career, you've seen a lot of what they do and you know kind of how they operate. First thing we did in 2008 was we had a client who sponsored a Bon Jovi concert over All-Star Game in Central Park in New York. That was a late decision. Within the last few weeks leading into July, we had 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. conversations every day with clients, with the city of New York, with Bon Jovi's people. That was something to me that showcased how a brand could immediately impact the market, how we could use those rights to give tickets to that, which was free, but to our customers first and foremost, and use that to kind of leverage our banking relationships. That was a neat one. In the similar year, a few months later, our client absorbed another brand in Chicago and absorbed the Chicago Marathon. And for the first time as an event marketing company, we had to put on hospitality for about 6,000 people, really with a few months just to plan. And for me, that was kind of one of the neatest because it was just a blank slate. And then more recently, we've had some bigger things that we've done. We had a YouTube commercial over the Super Bowl with Bank of America in red to promote U2 and make a large $10 million donation or kickstart that donation. And then this past fall, in the last few years, we've worked with Ken Burns and PBS to really showcase how our client, from a local perspective, adheres to a lot of the issues that Ken Burns does. There's Jackie Robinson and racism, how Jackie Robinson came into MLB. There was one, he just did a 10-part series about Vietnam and the many angles that both in America and in Vietnam had, whether you were fighting, whether you were protesting, whether you're a family member of individuals on both sides. And so our clients, from a CSR perspective, see a lot of value in that as well. So it's not your traditional sports, but it are rather topical, especially in today's world, issues that we want to have an open dialogue about. And it's just been an interesting couple of years because of how you've seen the conversation go, really, over the last year or two.
Nice. So within your industry, are there specific companies or like people who inspire you, or they're just simply amazing?
Yeah. And this is totally piping our own horn. So anybody watching this, I'm sure will just say that's kind of a liquored up question. But, internally at Octagon, we pride ourselves from hiring from within. I started as an intern. Our current president started as an intern. And so his name's John Shea. He kind of is in a unique position. We have about 400 or 500 folks in the U.S., about 400 or 500 folks abroad. And we can really talk to the fact that if you kind of get what we're trying to buy into here, it can serve you very well in your career. And so having somebody that's done it from the bottom all the way to the top, I've found is extremely helpful. So John Shea for me is one guy that I've always kept an eye on. Another one that's totally unrelated is Theo Epstein, obviously the GM of the Chicago Cubs, took the Red Sox to back to prominence after a long stay, did the same with the Cubs. And he really had an interesting philosophy on just sports and leading. And he really said something that hasn't applied to me because I've been in my role for 12 years. But he wrote once that anybody in a leadership position should basically do it for 10 years because that gives you the opportunity to shift the thinking, to begin to actually roll that out, and to see the results of it. And after that, it's time for a new change. And so it was an interesting philosophy. I've been in a leadership role at Octagon for 5-6 years because change is important. Change and seeing things differently, especially in our world, is kind of a mandatory. And so when you see things over and over, you can get complacent. And so we try to do that internally at Octagon a lot, where in a lot of other companies and a lot of our competitors, if you switch from one account to another, it's kind of frowned upon. At Octagon, we encourage it. We encourage you to see other offices. We encourage you to move to other places and work on other brands, because the more well-rounded you are, the more well-rounded our advice is for our clients.
Nice. So talk a little, you had mentioned some books you've read and things like that. So what other resources, magazines, social media, companies, books do you read or follow to kind of stay up to date with trends, new ideas, or just different kind of philosophies and approaches like you just mentioned?
Sure. I mean, there's a ton. In our world, Sports Business Journal is kind of the Bible. They send out both morning and afternoon, as well as global updates on your top 10 trends that are happening that day in real time. It could be deals that were signed. It can be player agreements that were signed. So that for me is every morning and every night. And then when I wake up, the international ones in my inbox as well. It mainly focuses on rugby and soccer, obviously much bigger abroad. But things that, as the industry has evolved too, Sports Techie is one that comes out on a daily basis, and a variety of others. Really, if you ask me today and you ask me 3 months from now, it's probably a few more, but those are the two every morning just because of how digital and social is evolving. Sports Techie is an interesting one to tell you about. AR and VR and all the folks that are kind of bringing technology to the field, as well as brands that are utilizing it within in stadium as well as the viewing experience. So for me, those two are the all day, every days.
Nice. And then realistically, the last question is just for our viewers, is there a way that they can get in touch with you, learn more about what you do, or just simply stay up to date with some of your activities?
Yeah. I'm not an avid tweeter, but at Brent_Simmons on Twitter, we try to keep folks updated on things that Octagon is doing on a weekly, if not bi-weekly process or basis rather. And then for me, I talk to folks all the time that are interested in Octagon. And 12 years ago, a lot of folks stuck their neck out for me and had a conversation. It led me to my first internship. And so as an opportunity to pay that forward, people can email me at any time. So that's just brent.simmons@octagon.com. Let me know who you are. If you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, we'll have a coffee, have a beer. If not, we'll set up a quick opportunity to touch base. And, we're always looking for great people. So I'm always happy to have conversations.
Awesome. Well, we thank you for your time, and appreciate you for, just chopping it up with me.